Okay, so I've got my pad there with, oh yeah, and I put a floor on top and just the basic walls for the car park. But that floor is on the bottom car park level. So I'm just going to copy that, just using copy clipboard, and then I'll paste it, line the selected levels up here, and put it on the car park level. So I've got the upper floor there. And if you don't know that option, that is the best thing for moving things from one level to another. It's fantastic, huge time saver. So now, if I go into my section, it's worth just having a bit of a look at the floor there because it's nice that I could copy it from here, but it's going through my walls now. And that normally would be a problem, but it's a car park. We're not going to see the outside of this, so it's actually not a huge problem. The only thing you maybe could do there to tidy it up is join them. So using the join tool, choosing the floor and the walls. Cleans up the geometry a little bit, and you could actually have the floor slab protruding all the way to the outside of the wall in this situation. I think that actually would probably make sense. If it isn't going to do that, the engineer will tell you. Let the engineer make the structural decision. So I think it'd be okay to show it like that for now. Worst case, you'll have to bring the edge of the floor in later. The main thing is that I've got the floor there to give me a base for my ramp. So I'm just going to set it out the way it is in the drawing here to start with, but once you understand how to do it, you'll be able to experiment with different ramp configurations, and maybe you could look at doing a little bit differently to this, because here we've got a two-way ramp which is used to access just this car park level, and then there's a separate two-way ramp that accesses the bottom car park level, which could be a bit confusing for the occupants of the building. You could always split it up between private and public, or employees from different sections maybe, but again, it could be a bit confusing. So if you can get a ramp to work that is inside and lets you go from level 1 to level 2 without going outside the building, that could be a good thing. But again, I'll start with this simple one into level 1, and I'll do a two-way ramp. So I need to have an idea of my levels, and looking here you can see this level 37.580 should work fairly well. Here you can see mine's actually a little bit higher, and so that should definitely work, because if it's higher we don't have to go down as far to get to the car park level. So to help me work all of these things out, I'm going to do another section view back into my floor plan, and I'll draw a section line that goes roughly through the area where I want the ramp to go. And now if I look in this section, it's even clearer, and I can see then hopefully the amount that my ramp needs to go down. So you can just try to make it with the heights you have at present, and if you make changes to those levels, and you probably will, then you can adjust your ramp accordingly. And again, you'll see the way that I like to set it up. I try to make it so it's easy to adjust. So back to car park level 1. And oh, now I've got the ground hatch there. Sorry, I haven't put a pad in. Oh no, I have. So why is that showing? Oh, it's because of sub-regions, so you might remember this. You can see here we've got this ground hatch coming in everywhere, and but it's not everywhere. If I zoom out, you can see, oh no, it is everywhere that it's cut. Oh, here we go, there it is. So you can see that there's a part here that's missing. And that tells me that there's an issue with the sub-regions, and this happens all the time when you make topo surfaces with sub-regions. When that's cut, there are some issues with the way that it shows, especially in the areas where you've got the sub-regions. So I find often it's easiest just to override that object, because I do have a pad there, so it shouldn't be showing. But again, I can just override it by selecting the topo surface. I'm going to right click and then go to override graphics in view by element, and then just turn off the cut pattern. So that's it, and that's a really useful step for your elevations too. So click OK, and it's still doing it. So you can see there, it's the sub-region, so it's not using the material setting. And there is another option for site materials. It's under massing and site. You can click on the site settings tool there, and then you can see the material. So it's interesting, it's not in the objects properties. So here's section cut material is earth. I'm just going to browse there and turn that off, and I'll try and fix the cut pattern later. But it really is going to get in the way now, so I'm just going to set that to no pattern. We can sort that out afterwards. There we go. That's better. So now I'm going to maybe put in some reference planes to set out the width of my driveway. You won't really know the exact distance from either side until you've started to put in some of the parking bays, but it would be good if you at least start with it as a round number, so it wouldn't hurt here to just change that. So it's 14,814, so I'm going to make that 15,000, and then select the other one and make it from the previous reference plane. So I'm just going to drag that witness line over to the reference plane I want to measure from, and so from that plane 5500, which is our roadway width, and then I'm going to extend that, or extend the reference planes a bit further. There we are, and then I'm ready to start making my ramp. So for this I'm going to start using the ramp tool, just clicking there on ramp, and if you've seen the stair tool, you'd know these tools are the same. So you've got run, boundary and riser, and usually you can just use the run option. So leave it on that, and you can just click a point then to start making your ramp. But we don't know the setup of that ramp yet. So the length there is 48,000, and that's determined by the settings here in the properties panel. So before I can use that slope, I need to set the slope that I want. Just clicking edit type there. I'm going to go to duplicate and give it a new name, call it car park transition. So I'm sure you know you have you'll need two different slopes, one for the access, the transition into the main ramp, and that's going to be 1 in 5, sorry, not 1 in 5, 1 in 10, and then the main part of the ramp is going to be 1 in 5, and then again the transition at the other end will be 1 in 10. And then the length of those transitions is 2 metres, and so that's just from memory, but it is in here. Yes, yeah. So yeah, I'll let you read through that. But again, so it's 2 metres, and you can probably just off the top of your head then work out what the height is, because it's 1 in 10. 2 metres divided by 10 is 200 mil, that big. So that's going to be the height there, 200. And it's good to remember that figure, because we can then check when we've made it that it's doing what we expect it to. Then the same will occur at the end. We're going to have a 2 metre long transition, which means we know that height is going to be 200 mil as well. And then the length of this ramp is going to vary, but it's always going to connect to the start and the end of those two transitions. So I've got my transition or car park transition type. Now if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll see, not quite at the bottom, but towards the bottom is where you set the slope. So this is the maximum slope, 1 over x. So in other words, 1 in the slope you want, in this case 1 in, sorry, I keep doing this, 1 in 10 for the transition. And then the maximum length is the maximum length before you need a landing, and for a car park, I'm not sure if there is a maximum. There probably would be if you read through it, but I've done 5-story car parks that had a ramp going the entire height of that car park. So all the way up to the top, and you've probably seen that if you've driven up some of the bigger ones. So I don't think there was a maximum, but there'd have to be somewhere, but it's long. And they're very difficult for pedestrians to use as well. So if you're planning on having it as something that is used by people as well as cars, then it would be very different, and particularly when they're long. I mean, most people can probably still get up even a 1 in 5 slope if it's short, but if it's more than a couple of metres, then you're not going to. And again, looking at the drawings here, you can see there isn't a footpath alongside this ramp, and if you're going to do yours like that, then it will be different. So again, 1 in 10 is my slope. Incline length isn't so important here, but yeah, won't worry about the other properties, so I'm just going to click OK, and then the width is given in the properties panel over here, so I'm going to make that 5500. And then I need to go back to the Run tool to start drawing again. Now, if I had a centre line, I could draw the ramp in position, but I don't, so I'm just going to draw it anywhere, literally anywhere on the screen, and then bring it down. We know the length needs to be 2000, so I can just snap to that. Yep, there you go, snap to it. So that's it, but I want to move it in position, so I'm going to select, after cancelling, I'm going to select all of these lines, click the move button, and snap it from the corner onto a point on my reference plane. So that's a good trick, whether it's for ramps or stairs. When you don't have a centre line, often it is easier to just draw the ramp or stair somewhere and then move it to where it should be afterwards. So that's it, that's my transition. Oh no, sorry, skipped a step. So I've got, it will work actually because it's starting on base level, and I didn't mention the levels because that's automatic. You can see that it's going up to ground floor. Now an option though would be to put in an offset there and set the height to what we know it is, which is 200 mil. But I've achieved the same thing by drawing it 2 metres long with a 1 in 5 slope, and that's going to be 200 anyway. So tick to finish. And it's giving me a warning telling me the ramp's not long enough to reach the next level. Well, that's okay because I don't want it to. If I go and look in my section now, you can see there's the ramp, and if I measure the height from the corner point here down to the floor, exactly 200. And again, it's got these stupid, well not stupid, but the railings that we maybe don't need. I don't like the vertical. So the other problem is the display. It's not showing up at all really in the plan. There are ways around that, but it's probably not such an issue at the moment. And so I'm going to go ahead and just do the next ramp. And so again, using the ramp tool. This time I need to spend a bit more time on the levels, and of course before I start with those, make a new ramp type. So I'm just going to go to edit type again, duplicate, and this is going to be car park ramp. And all I'm going to change there is the slope to 1 in 5. That's it. And now with the run tool again, make sure the width is right, and and sorry, before I draw, yeah, I'll do it before I draw. I'm going to change the base offset to 200, so it starts at the top of the ramp I've just done. And it doesn't hurt then to put in a top offset, basically to avoid doing any maths. You could sit down and work out the height mathematically like I did for the first one. And it's probably a good thing to double check your work, but if you put in a top offset of minus 200, then it should automatically stop at the right point. So again, I'm just going to click a point in a random spot and then come down to the end of that rectangle, because this time that should be exactly the right length. And then, again, just like before, selecting all the lines, clicking the move button, and I'll snap it in the corner across to the reference plane, and I'll do move again and just use that handrail as a guide, because that should finish in the right point anyway. So, that's good. So already I know how long the ramp needs to be to get into this point on the site. So I'll finish that. Again, it's going to give me a warning, but most of those warnings you probably know already, you can ignore. So one more ramp, and it's done. So I've got the levels here, and for this one, and also, before I do that again, the type, go back to exactly car park transition, and so I'm going to change the base level to ground floor, and the base offset to -200, and I'm going to leave the top level also on ground floor, but then the top offset I'm going to make 0. So then I'm going to just again draw it in a random spot, come down, and it should be exactly the same length as the first one. Again, just select it all, move it. Here it might be easier to move in section, so I'm going to finish it, and then going to my section view. Right, so you can see there's the ramp, and now something's gone wrong with my calculations then. Oh, okay, so the incline length meant this one's too short, so I'm going to go back and fix it. So here it should have finished 200 below the level there, but it didn't get that far because the incline length in type properties came in first. So 12 metres is the maximum length before this ramp will require you to have a landing. So I'm going to make that 30, just so it doesn't get in the way, 30,000. And now I can go back to that car park level, and I'm not going to delete this ramp, I'm just going to go to edit sketch, but I am going to delete the sketch, so I'm going to select all of that, delete, and then just click on run and make it again, and it should go longer. Now 18 remaining, that's right, that should be right. So I'll just again move that sketch into position. And check. That's better. Okay, so then you can see visually that should be the right height. That's pretty good. Yeah, so it is a bit longer than us. Oh yeah, now so that's the ground floor. Right, so, and it's good for you to see this because this is the process, but I'm going to show you now how to change it now that I can see a different level. So firstly I'll just connect this, I'm going to use the move tool and bring this across to join to the other ramp. There we go, so that's connecting, so that means the slopes are right. And then coming across with the whole thing with all three selected. So it's longer than the width of the building, and that's a problem. Now, looking at the ground though, obviously this is the lowest point, sorry, the highest point that you'd need to access the car park, but remember that the boundary is out here somewhere, and that's obviously lower still, and so you can easily have a ramp, probably with a lesser gradient, that's excavated into your site, and this is normally what you'd have to do. So you'd have a slope, and I think this is why probably when you're doing it at the garage that you would have come up with a bigger ramp than you need. So you can decide that you're going to have an access driveway, and basically you've got to work out then also the boundary point and make sure you can see it in section. So I've got this reference plane that's going to help me to work out the height of my access, but I need to go back into one of the plans, and the site plans, or I think the site plan here, this one might be a good one, yeah. So how do we know where the boundary is looking in that section view? Because the boundary is sloping relative to the view. It's not perpendicular. So if it was perpendicular, it'd be fairly simple. But because it's not, probably the easiest way is to draw a reference plane at the intersection of that that reference plane coming from my ramp, and make it horizontal. So with that horizontal plane, I know this is the far point. I'm going to need another one for the near point. Right, so just by drawing those two reference planes, now I can locate the boundary in my section. Oops, section 2. Okay, so, now, you know why I can only see one of them? Yeah, the distance, so with which distance? Yeah. Yeah, you're probably right. So yeah, probably, so you mean the length of the reference plane?
No.
Oh, yeah. So it's the length of the reference plane. So see how here this reference plane isn't close to the section. It just needs to cross over to make sure. Sometimes it'll show that this one's coming up, even though the section line doesn't cross it, because I think it's pointing in that direction. Okay, so that's a really good trick, because often when you're in section, you need to be able to pick up objects that won't actually show in that section. So reference planes are a really good way of locating those things. So now, I can see both of them. And it's this one here that I'll need to use as the starting point for my slide. So you could actually have the ramp starting there, worst case. And that could be a good thing, because it means that the ramp isn't going to take up space inside your car park. There are issues with that though, because you'll need to do a lot of excavation, and then you would need safety or barriers or balustrades. And so think about those things, but otherwise you don't need to conserve all the space in the car park, because remember, you're going to have the access way up to this line anyway. So even if you bring the ramp right outside the building, you're still going to have that roadway taking up space inside your car park. So probably the most efficient way would be to have the line of the ramp in line with the column that's alongside your driveway. That makes sense. And so that's quite an efficient way of setting it out. So again, I don't need to bring it all the way out, but I need it definitely to start outside the building. And so let's just quickly have a look at the dimensions so I don't have to look at it again. So that looks like about 6 metres to me. If you know car park spaces or depths are 5.4, so maybe 6, actually maybe 7 metres. Yeah, we'll say 7. Okay, so 7 metres inside the building. So again, with another reference plane, I can set that out. Okay, so then looking at the reference plane that I did to set the height, I'm going to move that. Well, we've got to work out where the ramp's going to come out, and this is technically this will be one of the most complicated maths things you can imagine, because you've got simultaneous equations happening as you move. You don't have to do them, you just need to know basically as you move this further out. So what I was going to do is copy this. I'll just do that. So I'm going to copy this across, and I'm just guesstimating the width of or the length of the ramp. So 10 metres, yep, that's probably pretty close. And so once I know this point, so this reference plane locates where the ramp comes out into the car park, this reference plane should locate where the ramp starts. And so then once I know where the ramp starts, then I can work out the height of that point where the ramp starts. Right, so that's now got the reference plane intersecting the ground at the start point of the ramp. Then I can work out how high the ramp needs to be. Once I work out how high the ramp needs to be, then I can work out how long the ramp is. Does that make sense? So, and I started with how long the ramp is. So I have to guess, in a way, that length, just to get a starting point, and then I can work from there. So, and again, so that height, once I know that, is going to give me a new length. And then, you know, you go around in circles, but this is just the way you have to do it. So, okay, so I've got that reference plane there at the height I'm going to use. I'm going to measure that now. So 2515.9. I don't want to work with figures like that, so I'm going to round that off, and I'm going to draw a dimension for it too, so that I keep coming back to it. So 2516, well, that's pretty close to 2500, so I'm going to make that my height. And you could easily excavate 15 mil if you have to. Okay, so 2500 is my new height from the bottom of the ramp to the top of the ramp. So how do I then get these ramps to follow that that new height? It's a lot easier than you might think. You can just select the ramp that's up the top, and we need to know the difference between those heights. So from the ground floor to the level there is 1500. So I can then select that ramp and then simply change the top offset to minus 1500, and then the base offset I'll again subtract 1500, so it's going to be minus 1700. Right, so now it starts at the height of that reference plane exactly. And then this one, it's a similar process, but we need to go and do something else in plan. So the base will stay the same. The top offset is going to again have the 1500 taken from it, so that's going to be minus 1700 as well. There we go. But can you see how it's just lowered it without changing the length? And so it no longer has the gradient that I want. So to get it to give you the correct gradient again, the easiest way is to go and edit the sketch, delete the sketch you've made previously, and then just draw the run again. And you can see then that's giving you a new length, which should be the right one. So I'm going to just use the move tool, put it back into position. Hopefully you can see from what I've been doing already that often here all you need to do is locate the ramp on your path, and then you can adjust the heights and other things in section. So I'll finish that and then back into section view. I can see and make sure these things join up. Yeah, so it's starting to work. So here I've got that first one, which I might move across now to my reference plane, which after all is where the access way should start, and where the ramp should start. I'm going to select the next ramp and again use the move tool, bring that across there. Missed it. Actually, the bottom, should it be the same? Yeah, it should be the same. But I'm going to use the top because I know the top will be right. There we go. And then the other one, of course, will go the same way. There we go. So that gives a pretty good indication of the ramp you need to access with those particular levels. The railings aren't necessary, so you can delete those. You'll probably have a concrete balustrade in the areas where you don't have walls, but that can be made with a different tool. If you need to do plain flat railings, whether they're concrete or glass or brick, it's often better to make them with a different tool rather than the railing tool. So the wall tool or just modelling place is better than railings. So yeah, so we've got the ground there still covering up that ramp. So maybe the last thing I'll do just to finish this off and have a go at it is the cutout for that I'll do it on the car park 1 level. So I'm just going to make a pad using massing in sight. I'm going to make a building pad, make it rectangular, drawing it with the reference planes I've used to set out the ramp. And then the height, I'm just going to do a bit of a guesstimate and say 1500. And click to finish, and you'll see why I guessed, because I don't really know until I see in section how high that needs to be. You could bring it up closer and make it, let's say, 500. No, that's too much. 600. No, that's alright. So I've got this big ugly pad sitting there in the section, and you can play around with the properties if you want to, but in the end that will probably be hidden. That's by using normal hiding view elements. But then of course it's cutting flat, horizontally, and it would be good if you could make it slope to follow the ramp. There is a way of sloping a pad. If you've had a look at doing slope arrows in some different things, a lot of objects in Revit give you the option of making a slope arrow. Okay, I'll just quickly show you. It's a fairly easy one to work out once you've seen it. So, let's go to edit boundary. So here, as well as making boundary lines, when you're making a pad, you can also make these things called slope arrows, and that will give you pad, or it'll work with floors as well, so I can give it a slope. So, try that if you're interested, and that's the way I used to do it, once I worked out that you could, but now I don't usually bother with that, because I've just found with all the issues you have, getting the earth cut pattern to show properly, and getting the ground line in elevation, it's often easier to do those things just with 2D annotation, rather than try to fiddle around doing everything in 3D. So, and that's really one of the keys with Revit, not trying to over-complicate it and do all the things that it can do, especially in 3D. When you don't need to do them, it's often easier not to. So the main thing is that in my 3D view, I can see the ramp. If the pad wasn't there, right, so there's my pad, if it wasn't there, the ground would cover the ramp. But just by putting the pad in, we can see the ramp in the 3D views, and the 3D views are an important thing for this project, because you'll need to obviously create a lot of hopefully really good quality renderings towards the end, and so that's an important thing you need to be able to see, and then of course you're going to see the doorway in your wall once you do that, and so also when you do the next ramp you may have to do the same thing, but again in section, I'm sure you all know, you can make things like regions to cover up all those messy things you might be left with, so that's probably the option I'd be using. I'm sure you've all done regions before, so I'm doing this pretty quickly. Probably the only thing there that you might not have done too much of is getting the right line weight. So here, these lines are following the, oh no, so they're following ground line, but I don't want them to be, so they should be, invisible. Yeah. And a good trick there is to bring them over the heavy lines, so it won't look right. And then over here, I'm going to just get this line to one side of the wall line, otherwise it's going to cover it up. It's just those little things with regions. And then these lines, they're the lines that I want to be my ground line, and eventually it would extend over to here once I've done the rest of the driveway. So there, I'll set those to be, I'll try wide lines, that's, oh no, that's all right, that's the one. So, or maybe just to keep it simple, I will do it up to here. Yeah. Okay, so then all I need to do is, with that properties panel, go to edit type, duplicate, and call it what it is, earth patch. and then set the pattern that I was using before anyway. Earth. Do you know how to do it 45? The earth pattern? Okay, we'll do that later. So, but for now, the horizontal one's fine. There we are, tick's finished. And if this was showing the hatch pattern, it's not because I've turned it off there, but if it was, that would match exactly the pattern under there. So that should be more than enough to give you the setup for the ramps. And so even if it's not the final ramp that you might know you will need, it's good just to put in a ramp that meets those controls, and so those slopes especially, and use that as a working out tool to establish the heights, particularly the access way, also the length of the ramp. Looking now in section, also in plan. Yeah, if you get some issues with the display, they can be sorted out, but I can hopefully tell with the reference planes, and I might even go back to section and just copy this one across. So with the reference plane there, there, then in plan becomes really clear where that is, and then that can be the basis for a lot of the internal planning. So again, that's come out a bit further maybe than what's shown here. So what you could then go to do, because you've got the grids and I don't, if you find that that is, say, coming out up here, well, what would you have to do to work out, or if you know that you need to bring that the end of the ramp back to no further than where this column finishes. So what's going to happen then if you move that? So you're basically moving the whole ramp so that it goes further outside the building, but then what's going to change? Exactly, that's right, because the ground's sloping outside. So if you move the ramp, then looking at the section again, right, it's accessing the ground at a lower point, so the slope will be less. Also, not the slope will be less, but the height will be less. Okay, and that means that it will be shorter, right? So that's going to then feed back into your other end. Like I said, it's this simultaneous circular equation, but all you can do is make a start on it and then just keep refining it. That's usually the best way. And then try doing one for the other level as well. See how you go. That's where I think there's been a bit of fudging, to be honest, going on with this drawing, because looking at the other one, this is the, oh no, this is car park level 2. That's done upside down. Yeah. Look, you can do it either way, but you need to just label it. So normally level 1 is, with car parks, is the higher one. I could be wrong, because I don't drive into a lot of big car parks, but I think that's normally how they do it, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, everyone does. Yeah, everyone does. They do it differently in different places, but normally it does go from. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, so just watch out for that. But then also this ramp here, I think should be probably longer. But the assumption would be that it's again cutting to the side. So there's more of a slope that just isn't shown on the plan here, because that would need to be twice that length to get down to that level. Here, 40, yeah, I'll let you work that out. So, yeah, I find it kind of enjoyable working these things out, because you know what the controls are, you've just got to make it work within those constraints. You have to be creative, and that's something I need to, really make a big effort when I've got to do something like that, but these things you can almost do on autopilot. So I'll give you some time to try that unless you've got any questions. But, yeah, hopefully that makes sense. And, oh, oops.